Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to head over to Tinkercad. So to do that, we're going to click in our address bar of a web browser, and we're going to type in tinkercad.com, and then we'll hit enter. So this will take us to our dashboard. So here on your dashboard is where you can do things like change your settings or view all of the objects that you've already been creating. You see, I've already created some objects. You might not be able to see any objects if you haven't made any, and that's fine. To create a new object, which is what we're doing today, we're just going to click on this blue button over here that says create new design. Give it a second to load, and it should take us to the workplane screen. So here we are on the workplane screen. Now, the workplane screen is what we refer to as a user interface. So what is a user interface? Well, a user interface is the way that a human interacts with a computer. So in other words, it's the way that the user of the computer interfaces with the program. So here we can see that we've got all of these options and buttons and everything that we need to be able to get into 3D modeling, and that's what we're going to be doing today with Tinkercad. So there's lots that we can achieve with the Tinkercad UI, and there's a lot that's going on the screen. So we're going to get into that today, but before we do, we need to create an object for us to experiment with. So on the right side of the screen over here, where we can see all of these shapes, or as they're referred to in the industry, primitive shapes, we're going to grab one of these boxes by clicking and dragging it onto the screen to create it on our workplane. So now that we have this cube on our screen, this red box on our screen, let's take a look at some of the ways that we can move around the screen to look at this block. So the main thing that you need to know, or one of the main functions you need to know, is the right click and drag function, which allows you to move around the workplane and move around the object and take a look at it from different dimensions. So if you want to move to the right of the object, you can, or if you want to look at the left side of the object, you can, or even the back side or the top side. Now, on the user interface on the left-hand side of the screen, we've got a few more options for controlling this movement. We've got this cube over here that lets us take a look at any side of this cube, or any side of our shape that we're working with, or our 3D model that we're working with. We can click here to view it from the front, or if we want to, we can click on this arrow here to view it from the right side. We can move it around, and as we move it around, it's good to note that the cube itself that we're looking at over here on the user interface moves as well, which allows us very easily to align very quickly with any side that we want to have a good look at. We can also click on corners and sides. Anything that we do will take us, or any of these parts that we click will take us to that corresponding part of the cube and give us a good look at it. So now that we've got that, what if we want to take a closer look at it? So that's where this plus and this minus comes into the picture. This is what allows us to zoom in and zoom out. Now, if you have a mouse wheel or a trackpad on your computer, you should be able to use the mouse wheel to zoom in without this plus and minus. But just in case you don't have that, there's a plus and a minus right here on the screen that allows you to zoom in and out. And then you can just right click to drag around. So what about these other components here? So we're not going to, or these other buttons here, we're not going to worry too much about these other buttons for now, but the one that I do want to show you is this little picture of a home, which is the home view, which recenters you back to your home view of where we started when we opened up the program. And that's very useful for keeping things nice and aligned. So I'm just going to put this cube a little bit more in the center so that we have a little bit of a better look at it. And let's take a look now at some of the ways that we can manipulate this cube. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can transform this block, or how we can scale this block. We're going to be changing its dimensions and its proportions slightly to something that we want it to look like. So let's just play around with this. If I just single click on this block, you'll see that a number of points that I can click come up for me to interact with. And you see each of these points corresponds to one of the corners of the bottom of the cube, or the bottom of the shape or the object. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click on one of these corners and I'm just going to drag it around the screen and just left click and drag it around the screen and just see how it changes. So if I pull it down, if I pull my mouse down, you see how it moves out of the canvas or towards me in the canvas and grows larger. If I grab one of these middle points over here, these little black points over here, and I pull it, I can similarly move the object towards me, or if I move the mouse away from me in the direction that I want the object to grow, I can make that object grow. I'm just going to right click and I'm just going to drag to move around a little bit. And actually, you know what? I'm actually going to use my shortcut over here and I'm going to click on the top. I think I want to start looking at this object from the top. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it grow out a little bit, and maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit longer. And then I'm going to click on my home icon to take me back to center view. So now that we're here, okay, now we should have this longer block here. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, and I think you can as well. In fact, just play around with these dimensions and just experiment and see if you can make a long rectangle. And then once you've made a long rectangle, see if you can find this top white square over here and just click and drag it down to make the block shorter or taller. And you know what, I'm going to bring it down and say let's settle, once you've played around with that, on having it a little bit shorter so that we've just got a plain flat surface for us to build something onto. So what we're going to be doing with this is we're going to be making a nameplate for ourselves. So from the top down, it's going to have our name on this box. So how are we going to create letters? Because that seems awfully complicated. Well, the good news about this is that Tinkercad has actually given you a library of objects that are pre-created for you to play around with. And the way that you find these is by clicking over here on this combo box, this drop-down box that says Tinkercad Basic Shapes, and seeing that there's a number of other categories for us to choose from, one of which is text and numbers. And I promise before the end of today, I'll go through some of these other headings so we can take a look at some of the other shapes that you can bring in and play around with. So let's click on text and numbers. And you see here, we have the option to bring in a whole bunch of pre-created letters. And if we click on this 2 down at the bottom here, if you're not careful, you might miss it, but you see it says 1 and then 2 here. If we click on the 2, it takes us to the next screen, which lets us see all of the other letters, numbers, an exclamation mark, and a question mark. So I'm going to actually, maybe I'll bring in an exclamation mark later, but for now, what I'm going to do is simply click on my name. So I'm going to write out Luke, and I'm just going to click on these letters, and I'm just going to drag them onto my work plane to place them on my work surface. Now you see these letters are a little bit small, so I want them to be embossed. I want them to stick out a little bit. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit over here. Let me just click on this plus to zoom in, and let's I'm struggling to see it. Sometimes you might struggle to see an object, and if that is the case, then just right click to move a little bit out the way so that it's in view. So there we go, I've done that. And now I'm going to click on this top, this top white square, and I'm just going to drag it up to make it a little bit more embossed. Maybe even what I could do is I could just click on this and actually just make it a little bit flatter. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my L over here, this character, and I'm just going to shape it so that it's a little bit bigger. And there we go. That's looking good. That's looking good. There we go. So now let's find the next character of my name. I'm going to bring in a U, and I'm going to drag it in and place it. And then again, I'm going to make it a little bit taller, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Now, I'm not going to go too much for perfect proportions. I'm going to go for something that looks a little bit stylistically cooler, even if it does look a little bit even if it does look a little bit funny. So I'm going to transition now. I'll give you a chance to pause the video here so that you can do the same thing. You can click and drag and place these objects onto your screen, resize them, and make them a little bit taller. and just make sure that they sit somewhere nice on the screen. Okay, so I've just taken some time now just to rearrange my shapes a little bit on my backplate, and I'm liking how it looks. But the one thing that I don't like about it is the colors. So I'm going to show you now how you can change the colors of all of these letters, and it's very easy. All you have to do, and I think we'll start with the backplate. I'm just going to single click on the backplate. And then over here, it will come up with this shape screen that gives you a couple of different options where you move sliders to change certain aspects of the shape itself, like its length, width, and height, which we've already been manually changing ourselves. So we're not going to mess around with that. What we are going to do, though, is we're going to just click on the solid color over here where it says solid and it's got this red shape. We'll just click there and it comes up with this color palette for us to use, so we can get our presets or our custom colors. I'm just going to use a preset color, and I think maybe I'll go with green. I think I like how that looks. Now, what about the letters themselves? I think maybe what I'll do is I'll make this one A, and you know what, if I don't like this color scheme, I think I'll change it, but maybe I'll make it yellow, and maybe I'll make it yellow and green. Two of my favorite colors. Although they don't really work too well together, but it doesn't matter. Okay, there we go. I'm liking how that's looking. So now that we're here, what we're going to do is we're going to rename this project over here. Right now, what's interesting is that, and it will be different for you, but Tinkercad auto creates, if you look up here in the top left, it auto creates a name for you. So mine's being called Exquisite Habby, which is lovely, but I think I'm going to change that and I'm going to make it to Luke Nameplate. And I would like you to please do the same. Your first name, or whatever name you've decided to put on your nameplate, and then space, and then nameplate, just so that I know what it's called when I take a look at it later. Okay, so now that we've got our nameplate finished, what we're going to do is we're going to find the Tinkercad logo up in the top left hand corner, where if we hover over it says Tinkercad dashboard, and we're just going to left click on that Tinkercad logo to save our work and take us back to the dashboard. And now when you go back to the dashboard, you should see your design there. Looking good. All right, that is it for this lesson. Thank you so much for coming to class, and I'll see you in the next one.